So today we are doing another recipe, and we just gave you one of those guys like 2 days ago. So like bonus, yay. I don't know how my schedule ended up doing this twice in the same week, but there it is. And so that's cool. We'd love that for all of us. Actually it's been like 3 recipes in the past week. It's wild. So many recipes. We should get to it. I will tell you more about this recipe, why it's different and cool in just a minute. But before I do, hello, I am Mrs. Soap and Clay. Let's make stuff. How's it going, Sudzers? Welcome back to the channel. You are at Soap and Clay, where we make all the soapy things, and you are here for day 290 of 365 days of soap, and today, as I said, is a recipe day. And not just any recipe. We are doing a soap dough recipe. And not just any soap dough recipe, a new recipe. Because I've already given you soap dough recipes at least once. So, of course, it has to be a different one. And I will talk to you about the reasons why we're doing a different soap dough recipe today during the video, but we should get to it because I gotta tell you, spoiler alert, this particular recipe, just the kneading alone to get it to clay form is kind of arduous, and so it might take a little bit of time in the video. So let's go to there and we will talk all about soap dough. Okay, soap dough recipe part 2, and here it is. Basically what we're looking at is equal parts coconut oil, palm oil, olive oil, and canola oil that's a 0.75 ounce of castor. I understand that it's hard to see that on the thing. So really castor oil is more of a suggestion in this, and that's actually wildly different than the soap dough recipe I gave you before. Now, the reason that I'm doing this is because multiple people have DM'd me and asked me about what I think of the soap guy's recipe that he has posted online. First and foremost, always be, reasonably careful with any recipe that you're getting online. Including mine, because it may not be their best recipe. In my particular instance, that's not including mine, but you should still approach all recipes that you can get for free on the interwebs as, well, it's a guideline. And as soon as I saw this recipe, I'm like, interesting. All right. So we have basically equal parts of two very, solid oils. And, the olive and the canola oil, again, you can just eliminate the canola completely and just put the olive oil completely in it. But what I found interesting was that the castor oil is, there's not a lot of it. But, for some people, getting castor oil is kind of hard. I like it. I like the castor oil and the inclusion of the castor oil in soap dough recipes at a reasonably high percentage, just because it tends to make the soap, when it's all said and done, more malleable. That said, I have also talked to you about how you can basically use any soap recipe to create soap dough. And so I thought, you know what, let's put my money where my mouth is here and actually show you a recipe that looks a whole lot like my Basic 3 or perhaps even my Big Bubble blend. and you prove that to you. Really, what you're looking for within a good soap dough recipe is not so much the oils, although the oils are important-ish, but more importantly, what you do with the soap once it's, done with your emulsion. So what you're going to do with it is heat it. CPOP is almost a damn necessity for this. And then within, 12 to 24 hours, you're going to, you know, mess with it and then cover it in saran wrap. Now, let's talk about why next. Now, so why is the CPOP needed? Why is the heat phase needed? So that's what that thing is underneath the molds right there. It's a heat pad for those of you who don't have like an oven to put this in. This works too. And why do you need to, give it a nice knead, like, bread dough or whatnot, and then go ahead and wrap it up super tight in saran wrap? Well, this is theoretically the reason why chemically any soap recipe will work for soap dough. It has a whole lot more to do with the exposure to the air, as well as actually hitting the gel phase than it does with the oils. I mean, again, if you want an easier soap dough recipe, I would recommend putting more castor oil than this in, like for sure, and cutting down the coconut oil. But I am willing to bet that this is still going to work just fine because I am doing the rest of the steps that are really required to ensure that this becomes sort of a clay-like consistency. And there are different variations of what clay means in a soap dough recipe. There's Play-Doh version, which is very, very easy to manipulate, but also the trade-off for that is you're not going to get the really nice, really crisp, detailed lines from a recipe like that, kind of like the recipe that I've given you before. Something like this with more of the solid oils, so your palm and your coconut, you're going to get more of a modeling clay consistency. And that means a lot more work as far as the kneading process goes. But if you are using extruders or if you are really upping your, clay sculpting game, it's going to hold the very detailed shapes that you do a whole lot better. Regardless of the recipe that you use, this particular part, very, very important. Put it on a heat pad, put it in your oven, cover it immediately with saran wrap to keep all of those humectant glycerin properties inside the soap and keep the soaps themselves as malleable as possible. And then I like to go ahead and just cover the top when I'm doing it this way with another heat pad. Both are turned on. Both are turned on to high. And I just let the timer run out on the heat pads. So they probably get, 3 good hours of actual heat. And then they're sort of insulated within that heat throughout the rest of saponification. So let's go check out the next step of soap dough. Okay, now on to the reveal. It's not a cut, it's more of a popping these things out of a mold. I do recommend using silicone or something otherwise easy to release the soap from. And I recommend doing this within 12 to 24 hours of pouring. That said, I unmold everything within 12 to 24 hours of pouring. So what I'm giving you are kind of like a pirate's code, more like guidelines. But when you have done that, the very next thing you're going to want to do is kind of break it apart and give it a nice knead. Now, you can do this in a number of ways. You can actually put this between 2 pieces of saran wrap and take your rolling pin to it. If you have children, you can make them put on gloves and do this thing. Because this is the thing about this recipe, it's kind of an arduous process. It's, again, more of a sculpting clay as opposed to like a Play-Doh. If you have worked with both, then you know what I'm talking about. But the heat from your hands eventually really does loosen all of this up and allow you to model it into almost anything, which is good. It's just the work to get it to a pliable nature. It's quite a bit more work than the last recipe that I gave you. But again, to that, if you're looking for really cool, fun extruder type things or whatever, like I Dream and Soap does, for example, this is, or yeah, well, I mean, anybody doing like the cool, witches' hats and stuff like that on the top of, I think, sorcery soaps, also a great example. This is a decent recipe to use for those purposes, even though the work is a little bit harder to actually do the molding. The designs are going to hold up better. They are going to firm up delightfully. Not to say that a Play-Doh type consistency won't firm up, because it will, but this is really going to provide you more detail in your soap dough designs. And so that's good. We like that for sure. For me, I don't know. I did these after I had just made like, I don't know, like 3,000 bath bombs in total for the day. So my hands were already in that claw stage. You know what I'm talking about. Like cupping a cylindrical thing 3,000 times and bang bang and press. And so my hands kind of hurt. And so doing this at the end of the day was like, oh my God, this feels like a lot of work. And it kind of is. Here's another example what I was telling you about. You can also put them in saran wrap and just use your rolling pin to get everything sort of reworked before you then, roll it all into a bowl and wrap it in saran wrap and put it in an airtight concealer or container after that, just to make sure that you have the longest lifespan that you can possibly get out of this soap dough. Now, that's the point. That's the key to really any soap dough recipe. Once you've done the thing, you want to wrap it and keep it not exposed to air. You want to eliminate as much air as possible from the soap, because air, well, that helps with losing of the water weight and all the evaporation, all the things. So wrap it up tight, put it in a container, and you will be able to use all of these soap or all the soap dough for several months to come. Speaking of several months to come, it's not going to actually be several months to come, but in the coming weeks, you're going to see what I have decided to do with all of this soap dough that I've specifically colored for these specific purposes. But for now, that's day 290, a new soap dough recipe. And there it is, a new soap dough recipe. And as far as this one goes, I mean, yeah, it gets firmer faster. So it's more like the difference between my last recipe, which is more Play-Doh-y in feel, to this one, which is more like proper modeling clay in feel. The biggest thing that you're going to need to do right after you release it from the molds and it's gone through its saponification thing is give it a good knead. Otherwise, it's going to be impossible to work with later. That's not to say that you need to constantly knead this. It's just in that beginning stage, give it a nice knead, get it into the balls, wrap it up in your saran wrap or what have you. Keep it away from air. And this recipe, the dough itself, lasts a very long time. Also, another fun way of coloring the soap clay dough in the beginning is always cool. Most of the time I don't do that, so it's not a necessary step. It's just for this particular batch of soap dough. I'm using it all for very specific purposes, a new theme that's coming up, and so I knew that I was going to need these specific colors. But if you don't know what you're going to be using your soap dough for, you can absolutely just make it without color and then add some mica into the parts that you want to color and do another kneading thing when you're ready to use it, if that makes sense. If you make this recipe, hey, let me know in the comments how it goes. I would love to hear from you for sure. If you're interested in more recipes and all the soapy things, subscribe. That would be excellent. For those of you who have subscribed, hey, Sudsers, you're excellent. And I told you that yesterday, and I'm going to tell you that again tomorrow because it's true all of the time. I'm out of here for today. I will see all of you guys again tomorrow for another round of soapy fun. Bye.